Hello and welcome to my video. Mr.net is here. This is video number 4 from our Sudoku tutorial. In the previous videos we create a grid and we can mark the places or the fields in the grid with a click. And in this video I want to implement some actions that I can set numbers into our fields. The first thing what we do is we open our English game scene, and in the canvas we have the main panel, and the main panel gets a new panel. So right click UI, create a new panel. Then I change the color of this panel. I let the color white, but it isn't transparent. Then I change the anchor presence to middle center. And the width is the same width like our Sudoku field panel, 500. And the height is, if we look to the cell size, 50. The spacing is 5. So I take as a height the 60. So then I change the position below my game field here, or below my Sudoku field panel. I have the width, I have the height. Then I change the name of this panel to control panel. And I save my game scene. The next point is, in our control panel we add a new component, and this component is a grid layout group. The padding left is 5 and the padding top is also 5. The cell size is the same cell size like in our Sudoku field panel. We have here 50 for the X and 50 for the Y. So I use here 50 and here also 50, and the spacing is 5. Well, then we go to our prefabs, and we have here the field prefab. With Control D I can duplicate this prefab, and I rename this prefab the control prefab. So if I click on this prefab, we have a copy of our field prefab with a button, image, and with a specifies rect transform here. The next point is we are open our script, our English game script in Visual Studio, and inside this script, over the start method, we create two properties. One is public game object, and I call it the control panel, and the other game object is the control prefab. So I save the script, I go back to Unity, and in my English game scene I have the event system, and we have here the control panel and the control prefab. And with drag and drop I attach the control panel here to the control panel object, and my script, my prefab, the control prefab, is attached to the control prefab object of the script. Now I save this, I go back to the script. Then we have the create field prefabs method. So I copy this method and paste it. Then I have to change the name of this method, create control prefabs, and I need 9 control prefabs. So I change the name of the variable in the for each to I, and the for each starts with 1 and ends smaller than 10. The second for loop here, I don't need it. Then I have to format it a little bit so it looks better. So then we create here a new instance, but the instance is not a field prefab, it is a control prefab. So I copy this control prefab name here, paste it here, and the parent object is not the Sudoku field panel, it is the control panel. Well, the English field prefab object property, I don't need it here, so I delete it. And this line with the actual listener, I comment it out for the first. So now I save the script, and I forgot to invoke the new method in my start method here. So first we call the create field prefabs method and then the create control prefabs method. Now I save the script, I go back to Unity, and I start the game. Now we see we have 9 prefabs in our control panel. Then I click here on my control panel. I want to change the background color, so the Sudoku field panel, I click here the color of the image and I copy this value here, the hexadecimal value, and I paste it here into my control panel to the color. Now I have the same color, and the next thing is we have to implement some information on to our control prefabs. So I open my script, my English game script, and my instance has a component, and this component is a text. But we have to give attention. If I open my English control prefab, the text is a child component of the control prefab. So I don't call here the method getComponent, I call the method getComponent in children. I get the text, then I set text property is i.toString. So the text is this run variable in the for loop. I save this script here, go back to Unity, open my scene, and now I start the game, and we see I have the numbers 1 to 9 in my control panel. The next step is we have to implement to our instance here the actual listener or the method. So we see instance getComponent button on click add listener. We add a new method to this listener here, and for that I create here my own method, private void. I call it the click on control prefab. So I have to invoke this method here, and I also need information which number was clicked. So for that I open Unity, I go into my script folder and right click, I create a new script. I call it the English underline control prefab object. Double click, I open it in Visual Studio. Now we have our class here. We don't inherit from the mono behavior, and we also don't need the update and start method. The only property what we need is a public integer, and I call it the number. Now I save this, go into my English game script, and here in my create control prefabs method I instantiate a new English control prefab object. And I set the property of the number, or the property number, to the same value of my running variable in the loop here. So I dot toString. Oh, that's not a string, that's an integer. Well, now I have the information, the number, and I copy the name and the object, and I take it in my method as an argument, and also I have to use it here in my action listener. Click on control prefab. As an argument I take the current control prefab object, and here I create a debug.log message to check if it works. Click on control prefab, and then I use here the number, so English control prefab dot number. I save this script, go back to Unity, and now I start the game. In my console here I can look, I click 1, click on control prefab 1, 3, 7, 9. Okay, it works. And now I want to implement in my method, if somebody is click the control prefab, I want to set the number to a field. And we know that our current hovered field prefab contains a hovered English field prefab object. So I implement here if underline current hovered prefab is not null, and inside this body here I have to set the value of my English field property prefab. So I go into my object and I have to access this instance. So I implement a method public void set number, and as an argument I get an integer, and I call this argument number. Then I can say instance.get get component in children. I need the text. Dot text is the number toString. So I save this. That's okay for me. Then I go to the English game, and here inside this I can call current hovered field prefab dot set number, and the number is the number which is given through this argument here, number. Well, that's it. So I save the script, I open Unity, and I start my game. So if I click here, nothing happens, but if I hover something, I can change the value inside the box. Well, it works. Hopefully you like it. Please subscribe my channel or give me a feedback, and hopefully I see you in the next video. Bye.